Our program tonight is How to Build a Great Company Step by Step with Steve Blank, serial entrepreneur and founder of Epiphany, professor UC Berkeley and Stanford, and author of the startup.
That startups are not smaller versions of large companies. Is that large companies, at its core, execute known business models. But startups do something very different. Startups, in their early days of searching for a business model, is a plan, is just a series of untested hypotheses. And I use this fancy word hypotheses because when I teach at Stanford, those students pay $50,000 a year and they need to tell their parents they learned something impressive, at least once a week. But outside of Stanford, a startup really is a series of untested guesses. It's a big idea. A startup is nothing more than a faith-based enterprise on day one. It's faith. It's truly faith. And what your job is, another insight, is to turn that faith into fact as quickly as you can. So a startup, because it's an irrational decision. The odds are you're going to fail. But you do it because you're passionate, you're excited, etc. But the goal is to turn that passion and faith into facts as quickly as you can. And 4 years ago, there was a guy in Switzerland, Alexander Osterwalder, who wrote a book called Business Model Generation. And if all of you don't have it, you should. It basically says, look, any company could be described as a series of 9 components. One is, what are you building? What's the product or service? He called that the value proposition. 2 is, who are you building it for? Customer segments. You know, how are you going to get the product from you to those customer segments, channels? How are you going to create, get, keep, and grow? That's how you're going to get customers, keep them, and grow them. We call that customer relationships. What's your revenue model? How are you going to make money? Do you need any partners? Are there any resources you need? Activities? And what are the costs? Every startup needs to answer those questions, ultimately to become a business. And the 2 most important on day one is, what am I making and for who? Which we call product market fit. You know what they'll tell you? Here's how to write a business plan. It looks like the 1960s. And think about what that means. Is that, okay, write this document, you know, show me the market size, etc. Instead of saying, hey, you want to open up a restaurant? Maybe you ought to work in one for a while. You want to pick this location? Maybe you ought to stand on that corner for, like, you know, with a clipboard. That is, there is no notion that any experiential effect is necessary. So this process works for small businesses, and it also works for large corporations. As you well know, every major corporation in the 21st century is dealing with the issues of disruption, right? Everybody. And the interesting thing is disruption. Is disruption on day one looks like a toy. In fact, the apocryphal or semi-apocryphal story I heard when I was in Finland is the day the iPhone was announced and shipped. The Nokia board was meeting and they had it flown by courier to the board meeting. And Nokia engineering had already built prototypes of, at least for hardware, something that looked close to the iPhone. And in fact, they were in the board asking for a couple $100 million commitment from the board to go make one just like it. Senior board member picked up the iPhone and asked the fatal question for Nokia. You know what it was?
No.
What's their market share?
Oh. Interesting.
What was their market share in day one?
0.
Disruption on day one to a large corporation always looks like a toy. And so therefore, as a large corporation, you need a continual process to deal with not just sustaining innovation, as Clayton Christensen labeled 15 years ago, but you need a continual process to deal with disruption, because it's only going to get worse in the future. insight we now have after 50 years in Silicon Valley is that there are no facts inside your building, so get the heck outside. It's a big idea. That is, there's no doubt that you might be the smartest person in your building, but it is in fact guaranteed that you are not as smart as collectively all your potential customers. But in fact, if you are an engineer, the default is thinking that maybe more code or more features will solve a talk to the customer problem. And some of you are actually like looking at your shoes being a little embarrassed right now. So the process we talk about to turn those hypotheses into facts is called customer development. And customer development says, we expect that your initial guesses, your initial hypotheses are more than likely wrong. And that's going to be okay. But we're going to get you out of the building physically or virtually if you're a web mobile app, and we're going to have you start interacting with customers as early as possible. And you're going to test two fundamental assumptions. One is your assumption about what the problem or need the customer has. Because when you started this company, inside your head you were going, yeah, we're going to solve X problem for them. Or if it's an entertainment product, oh, we're going to fulfill this need. Great, let's see if someone other than you shared that belief. And if they did, now we're going to test the second piece, which is, does your solution solve that problem or need? That cannot be done inside your office. To answer your specific question, web, mobile, cloud apps allow us to get that feedback incredibly rapid, at a scale and at a speed never imagined. But the same process also works for physical products. It just means you physically need to get out of the building, kiss your family goodbye because you're not going to see them for a while,
right.
You know, and then spend a lot of time talking to customers. You haven't validated your hypotheses until you've seen potential customers' pupils dilate, right? That is, unless you see them going, right, personally, then all the market research stuff on the web, that's great. But unless you've cross-correlated that by having some percentage say, grab you by the collar and go, you're not leaving until I have this app in my hands or I have this product in my hands, you really haven't gotten valid customers. We're not trying to sell anything at all. We're trying to do something that's very hard for an entrepreneur, and that's called listening, right? And that's called asking questions about what other people's needs are versus you trying to push. Look, I just invented this. Don't you think it's great? And how many will you buy? Rather than tell me about your problems, you know, or, you know, gee, how do you solve them today? And so the customer development process is not about, you know, how can I take all my IP and dump it on somebody's desk and say whether they like it.